Okay, once again, this is Lloyd Ramdari, and we're about to start our presentation. And our topic today is streamline your IBM I monitoring and some of the best practices to improve IBM I monitoring and integration on the enterprise. And once again, I'm Lloyd Ramdari, and I'm a part of the support team here at SEA with many years of experience on the IBM I platform, with the majority coming from securing the eye as well as message monitoring and resource monitoring on the platform. But before we go into our topic today, let me go ahead and introduce you to our company. For those of you who don't know who we are Software Engineering of America, and we've been around since 1982 with 39 years of excellence um, in securing the eye, as well as 85% of the Fortune 500 and 9 of the Fortune 10 that license one or more of our products. One thing that we usually pride ourselves in offering is the 24/7, 365 support right out of Garden City, New York. When you call into our support line, you'll always get a live person, and within minutes, you're speaking to one of the members of our support team here at SEA. We also offer more than just a monitoring solution for the IBM I. We also offer a suite of products that falls under the iSecurity umbrella. This covers end-to-end security for the eye. So if you're ever interested in securing the eye, we do offer solutions to help you do that. But for today's topic, just a moment, I understand people aren't seeing my slides. So let me go ahead and see which screen I'm sharing. Okay. All right, good. All right. So for those of you that missed the slides before, we were talking about our company and the suite of security products we offer together with our monitoring and resource management enterprise solution, ABS message. And also, when we talk about our solution, everything we mention is all inclusive. So it's an all-in-one product. Nothing is separated out. So when you do decide to go with ABS message, you're getting these three interfaces. You got a 5250, you have a GUI, and a web interface, all built into the product. So for our presentation today, we'll be discussing some of the best practices for modernizing your approach when it comes to monitoring the IBM I. So in addition to that, we'll identify the need for integration with non-IBM I applications like ServiceNow, PagerDuty, Splunk, just to name a few, and showcase our interactive dashboards to investigate historical performance when it comes to data and trending. We'll also touch on tracking other critical IBM I conditions across your network from a single dashboard interface, which is currently on our roadmap, should be coming out shortly. And then we'll move on to a live demo with some examples, and that will be followed by a brief Q&A session where you get the opportunity to get your questions answers. Please submit your questions in the text area at any time during the presentation so that we can address them at our Q&A session. Don't wait until the end to submit your questions. So as we're going through the presentations, please feel free. So without further ado, let's begin with some of the current practices that companies and organizations are using when it comes to monitoring the IBM I platform today. So we know that managing the IBM's platform can be a tedious task without the help of a third-party enterprise monitoring solution, namely ABS Message. So we see that if you don't have a monitoring solution outside of a third-party solution, you pretty much have to write your own code or perhaps have your operations team work around the clock eyeballing critical messages and situations that are occurring on the platform to see if they can detect and get those critical events handled in a timely fashion. So many customers are looking to monitor those IBM I system generated messages as they get automatically generated when certain conditions occur. So uh, it, together with that, you have people looking for a centralized way of collecting those generated message, so they can go to one single interface and be able to see what's happening across the network if multiple systems and LPARs are involved. On top of that, not just those automatic system generated messages, you also want to monitor conditions, perhaps a certain status of processes that are occurring on the IBM I, namely maybe subsystems and their statuses, jobs and their statuses, and just to name a few, uh, companies are looking to monitor those type of things that don't generally get um, generated as a message ID or a message to a message queue. Now, to expand on these system type messages that gets generated by the IBM I, um, the options are represented here. When we're talking about those system messages, we're talking about system operator messages. We're talking about history log message, where the operating system is collecting a historical record of what transactions are occurring at the OS level and what applications are doing as they're doing things with the OS or the operating system. And thirdly, you have the applications, your critical applications or your production applications that are generating messages. Now, many of these applications do not necessarily generate messages to a system operator or the shipped operator queue. They have their own queues. So it'd be nice to be able to monitor those application queues as well. And the only way you probably can do that efficiently is with a third party enterprise solution. So, talking about centralized collection of generated messages, uh, aside from the typical monitoring of IBM I generated messages from message queues, there are other areas where additional benefits could be garnered as well. So if you one example would be converging all of your critical messages in a centralized landscape, and this is especially important from a management perspective when monitoring multiple systems through a single pane of glass, so to speak. So this type of implementation would help the organization manage their multiple systems in a more usable and consolidated fashion. So while tracking the system generated messages in a consolidated view, there's also a need for resource condition monitoring as well. On here, we're showing you some of the typical ones that many people are looking to monitor for. For example, in a subsystem, you want to look at the number of jobs that are running, in a certain subsystem, maybe if they're active or they're not, if the subsystem is active or not, or maybe you want to look at some performance metrics, CPU utilization against a predefined threshold, DASD, or some people refer it as ASP, whether it's a system ASP or independent ASP. You want to make sure that you're getting alerted when um, if you're monitoring for that particular condition. So um, the main idea behind this concept is that you're monitoring your IBM I server around the clock and are receiving alerts when certain server processes or related situations exist that might need immediate attention. So while these current practices may meet some of your immediate monitoring concerns, there are other areas you can take advantage of to further modernize your IBM I server monitoring today. Uh, one of which would be to be able to integrate monitoring with well-known non-IBM I applications, namely ServiceNow, perhaps PagerDuty, or maybe a SIM or syslog appliance like Splunk, QRadar, you name it, that you've already invested in. These are uh, solutions you already have, and you don't have the integration between your monitoring and these other applications. Another would be taking advantage of new dashboard technology, which allows third-party applications like ABS Message to provide amazing graphical user interfaces you could employ towards analyzing perhaps performance data trends, as well as having drill down access to deeper levels of the collected data. And then finally, the added capability of able to be able to see resource conditions in a single dashboard view um, would be a truly an add value where you can detect events that are presented in a visually coherent way. So the question remains, why integrate? Why integrate with these non-IBM I platforms or solutions? We know that companies are heavily invested in some of these non-IBM I, say for instance, help desk solutions like ServiceNow, ConnectWise, and others, which can potentially be the driver for much needed integration with the IBM I existing monitoring solutions. Um, this actually uh, will help you expand your ROI when it comes to your monitoring software integrating with these other solutions. Furthermore, you have auditors that are seeking reporting over all activity from all servers on your network, including the IBM I server. And to make it easier for the auditors, it'll be much more efficient if the data can be obtained in a centralized manner um, from a centralized location. So you're sending all of the data to a central um, management server, so to speak. So aside from that convenience, many of the non-IBM I solutions do not typically include integration with the IBM platform by default. So what the integration helps you do is it cuts out the need for customized program or programming on the external software side, and it addresses uh, the multiple points of failure. Um, one example is um, if you're sending uh, messages or emails to that external appliance, if you're interfacing with that appliance that way, you have to rely on the email server as a point of failure. If that email server goes down, there goes the whole integration process. So that's why you would want a seamless integration between the IBM I and these external appliances where there's no need for that middle mechanism. In other words, you'll have more control over what's being forwarded from the IBM I server in a secure manner and less reliance on the external appliance, the non-IBM I appliance through direct integration. So let's begin by showing you or illustrating how ABS Message Enterprise Solution integrates with an external application like and specifically ServiceNow. So we see here the process can be triggered by a message ID being collected by a filter rule definition or an escalation procedural action. So basically, what happens is your operating system will generate a message that goes to a message queue. Then ABS message collector will pick it up and then apply it to a filter. If the filter gets selected, then the filter processing determines, based on configuration, whether it needs to go to the ServiceNow appliance through the integration API. So that's one way of getting the messages across to the ticket generating ServiceNow appliance. Another method would be escalations, an escalation procedure. Maybe you want to integrate by an action as opposed to when the filter is selected. So you want to say, okay, I want the integration to happen as an action. And that's where escalations come in, where it can be determined or the trigger can happen through an escalation action. And then thirdly, if you needed a command to run in your own custom program, ABS Message can provide such a mechanism as well that can also trigger the integration through that method as well. So reflected here is our ABS Message UI. It's our web UI that we're showing one of these distinct ways um, the integration can occur. So starting with an IBM I generated message ID, it gets selected by the filter. And inside of that filter rule definition, we see that there's a sequence number, there is a name, there's a description, and then you have these selection criteria where you can get granular with your setup. Um, we do support wildcards and list and an individual ID if you wanted to use an individual message ID as the definition. But in this case, we're showing you that we can create a list of those critical messages that you want tickets to be generated off of that list. So here we have a list of message ID, and when we go down to the parameter that you want to select for the integration, we have generate ServiceNow ticket. And if you click on this option, it takes you to a custom template. And this is a customizable template that you can use to create um, to be to create for the integration. And we'll expand on that in a little bit, but that's how you would set up your filter rule to interact with the ServiceNow API. So here we're talking a little bit more about those templates that get selected. And this is a customizable template that contains the attributes that exist on the ServiceNow appliance. For those of you who are familiar with ServiceNow, you would know that it does ship with a multitude of these attributes that can be selected. And you would select them using these little options in the middle here. We click on that, it opens up another panel, and then you can use that star all option to select them as needed. But since there can be 80 plus attributes to be selected, you might want to create a subset of it with only the pertinent ones that your company needs to create those tickets. And that's where the ABS message comes in, um, where they'll provide you the opportunity to create those groups, those subset, if you will, of the attributes that you can use to create your templates. And that's pretty much how you design your template. Now, for the value column, you would decide whether the value is static or variable. If you want to use a variable, we do support variables to be resolved with the actual value when it comes to ticket generation. To expand on the group feature of ABS message, um, we can see here that, from a ServiceNow perspective, many admins would probably tell you the solution comes with over 80 predefined attributes that will be used for ticket generation. Although many organizations wouldn't need to use them all in a real setting, um, in ABS message they'll have a choice of pre-selecting the ones they truly require for ticket creations, or possibly they can create their own attribute on the fly. This is exactly where the attribute groups makes the most sense within ABS message solution framework. So it provides you with the value of being able to create those attribute groups custom defined by the user and contain a subset of the relevant attributes, which are the only ones the organization needs to use moving forward. And on top of that, it's an easy right click on any line item to create, copy, edit, or add uh, to the existing list or manage the attribute. So it's pretty easy to use with the mouse for those who like point and click. And a cross reference feature is also available to determine where the group was defined to be used within the application. So whether it's the defined group is being used by a template, or that template is being used by a filter, and you need to find out, where it is used. So that cross-reference feature is available as well. So when it comes to an escalation procedure, whether it's defined as a private escalation, that means the private escalation follows the filter rule. It's associated with that. It's married at the hip. There's no way, it cannot be reused for another rule. Or shared escalation, which is the opposite. It can be reused across your multiple um, rules, filter rules in the application. So um, in this illustration, we're showing that a ServiceNow action can be used as an escalation procedure. So it's part of the escalation procedure, and you can mix and match. You have combinations of what you can do with the escalation. You can uh, create that ticket, and you can also escalate within the application itself. So you have that option. Maybe send an email alert, or run a command, or send a page. I will show you that live as we go to our live demonstration. So here's an example of what the integration result will look like from the ServiceNow ticketing system. And you can now see where we got those attributes from. So this is the ServiceNow names for those attributes that we're selecting to be resolved. So we have a number, we have a caller, we have a category, and then subsequently we can pick these if they apply or not. We can leave them blank. We have a state that we resolved, an impact, an urgency, a priority, an assignment group, and then for the short description, we had variables that got resolved to the correct value. So we see that how it works. On top of that, you don't have the need for any external mechanism between your IBM I enterprise solution and the appliance, the external appliance. The integration is pretty seamless. There's no moving parts in between. So now that we talked about external appliance, um, what about other external appliance like syslog? Why integrate with those types of technology, the SIM technologies, some people like to call it? Um, well, we see that companies and customers are using these technologies like Splunk, QRadar, Alien Vault, just to name a few, to make it easier to detect potential threats. They are also able to create real-time detection rules for all their systems in the network within a holistic view across their systems for all of the security related and operational type activity. What this also helps them do is to be able to graphically identify trends based on collected data in a centralized manner and perform analytics and forensics as well as uh, things are occurring across their network. They're able to see it in a graphical way. And on top of that, they're meeting their audit and compliance requirements as well. So, how does ABS message enterprise solution do this? How do we integrate with a syslog type appliance? ABS message ships a command which can be used to interact with any such appliances, whether it's Splunk, Alien Vault, QRadar, ArcSight, you name it. We can interact using this command, and it's basically a filter script. In your filter rule definition, we can assign a script. And inside of that script, we can insert this command. And this command is very flexible. You can include a destination address, a severity type, a tag to tell, who was the source or what the SIM is looking for as a key or a tag for identification. And on top of that, we also have the ability to support variables. And our variable selector is simple. It's just select variables. It opens up a table, and then you select the appropriate variable that you want to use as part of the message structure that you're sending over there. How does it look on the other side? Here's a snapshot of what it would look like. Here's your tag. Here's your message ID. And then you have the event and the severity code. So there you have it. No external mechanism required for your SIM appliance integration with the IBMI. So now that we covered integration best practices with non-IBMI solution, we can now move on to our discussion on dashboard best practices. And what we're finding is customers and clients are looking for a broader um, perspective, a broader viewpoint that you can use to quickly identify and react to critical conditions as they occur. So they want to look at things from a summary perspective in a graphical way, and that's where dashboards technology comes in. Graphically, you can review trending information and come up with the best course of action to take. And as a result, you'll be able to manage critical issues better and determine the most effective remediation plan. And then finally, customers are able to monitor and keep track of critical events in real time, which helps them evaluate the situation better and react appropriately. So, how does ABS Message accomplish this? We are able to render in a dashboard fashion um, our performance metric information as it concerns with the IBMI. So here we're showing our web UI, and you can see not only we can look at CPU utilization at a summary level. You can see in this column, and then or DASD at a summary level. We can drill down. You can drill down immediately in real time to the details, or you can look at it in an aggregated way. Maybe history over a period of time, historical view over intervals in a time frame, and drill down in a layered approach. So we'll demonstrate this in our live demonstration how that layered approach can help identify uh, some trends and some typical trends you can use for further analysis. Um, so what we're looking here at is the historical aggregation view. So once you click on that, uh, you can see over a period of time through the line graph here that things have been happening. And you expect this for DASD storage. You don't want to see spikes or dips in on the graph, because that would indicate that someone either is putting a lot of information at the given time onto your storage or deleting large amount of information at a given time. So at a glance, you can probably, if that's occurring at any point in this graph, you can quickly see how you can ascertain that information by just looking at it that something is odd. There's an exception, there's a red flag. Here we have a spike, here we have a dip, things like that. And then on each one of these points, you can actually drill down to the next layer and then the next layer until you get down to the nitty gritty details. This is what the details will look like. This is exactly what we mean by granular detail. You'll be able to identify growth based on your native use, your IFS use, your unused portion at a glance. If you're interested in top libraries, top objects, top IFS files, top IFS directories in a graphical way, here it is. So you're getting a lot of good information. Aside from this, you also have some tabs available to you where you can see memory attributes, system attributes, things like that. And we'll show you that in a real setting um, in our live demo. So the same thing you can do for DASD, you can do for CPU. Um, the performance trends can be easily identified and detected in real time or historically along the graph. Now, CPU usage is usually more volatile, so you expect it to be up and down, where you have peaks and valleys and that sort of thing. And they're all drillable, as we indicated in before. So, what is on our roadmap when it comes to dashboard features? We here at SEA is fully committed in developing and taking advantage of the latest technology in the dashboard arena. So what you see here is what ABS message will be providing, which is more than just CPU and DASD metrics in a dashboard. So coming down, not too long down the road is you'll be able to see jobs and their statuses in a graphical way, in a summary fashion. You'll be able to see job queues. Perhaps your job queue is hitting a threshold. It's hit 20 or 30 jobs waiting to execute, and you want to know, you want to be able to see that in a graphical manner to determine, oh, I should be moving jobs out of that job queue because it's holding up production. Um, Objects and their sizes, subsystem user profiles. One example would be service accounts. Some service accounts should never be disabled because when they're disabled, production stops. So you might want to see that in a graphical way when those service accounts have been disabled. They're no longer active. Devices, the same can be said for them, and you'll have the flexibility for defining your collectors. You'll have the definition to manage them, to determine what the intervals should be. Are there 5 minute intervals on the collection? Are there 10-minute intervals? Are there 15-minute? You get to set that value. So that's our overview of our discussion. Now we will move into our live demo segment where we'll be showing you our ServiceNow integration. We'll show you shared escalations. Then we'll show you syslog integration, and then finally we'll um, explore dashboard. So, oops, let's go to our web UI. So this is what ABS message gives you as a web interface. And if you notice, it's a centralized aggregation of all of your messages in a single pane of glass, if you will. You can see that we can color code those systems for easy identification. So you can point out which system is which and what message belongs to which. And you can see them all in uh, a network console. And you have the capability of addressing these messages from the console as well. So if you right click on messages that require a response, and these are all informational, but if say you wanted to respond to a message, a simple right click will give you the options to do that. So for those who like point and click, very slick to be able to do that from a GUI as opposed to the 5250. And then we can toggle between this perspective and other perspective. We have dashboard perspective and we have configuration. So we can flip to configuration since we're going to be talking about ServiceNow first. Let's begin with that and let's see how it works in a real setting. So we have these rules that we can create. We do have one that we already created called ServiceNow Critical, which is a rule that checks for critical messages that we want automatic ticket to be created using our ServiceNow um, external solution. So if I go into that filter and I edit it, I could see how it's defined. We have a sequence number. Here's a name. Here is the description and the list of messages that we want to monitor is called critical. So there's a list called critical, and inside of that have a bunch of message IDs that we determine are critical that we want to be selected by this filter whenever it occurs on our system. And then, you have the other parameters that you can optionally define for selection criteria. But the one we're most interested in is the generate ServiceNow ticket. And clicking this option actually takes you to a panel where you will already have defined your templates. So we have a few here that we could select, and we're pretty much done. But let's take a look at these templates, how they're defined. So I'll get out of here and I'll go to that notification message templates, and I could go look at one of them. I could say edit, see how it is, how it's defined. It's a ServiceNow template, so we expect to see that type there, and name, description, and then you have your attributes. And if I click on this middle option, it takes me to where those can be selected from. Remember I mentioned in our overview, there's the star all. That means all the defined ServiceNow attributes that are available in ServiceNow can be selected. Or perhaps you're not so concerned about all, you just want a handful. You can create a group like this and just select that handful, and you can use these as your selection criteria as opposed to going to the all. So that's how you would design and define your notification message template for ServiceNow. And then for the value, you have the ability to mix and match uh, static values as well as variables. And we do ship a table with the variables, so you'll be able to decide which one is appropriate. And once that's done, you signed it. You sign it to the filter, like we it showed you before, by just clicking the option to generate ServiceNow ticket and selecting the appropriate one, as we have done already here. So that's done. So why don't we go ahead and see if we can generate one of those critical messages. What's nice about ABS message, we can do that. Simply, if you had a enterprise solution like ABS message, you can actually go to our menu, and this is our main menu. And if I go to option 80 and 12, we have a generate test message option. So I can just pick that, put in the appropriate identifier, and we're using today 9898, which is the one we want to use. And then we come down to message text and data, and then I can put in something like critical ServiceNow. Just for our exercise today, we're going to do it like this. Message, let's call it message one, and send it. And then we can actually look at the 5250 console. We can do it on the web UI. We can do it on the green screen as well. And we can toggle between local view and network view. So this is your network view on the 5250. F13 gets you to the local view. We have the automatic refresh here in red. It's nice eye catcher to tell you have the automatic refresh on. So every 10 seconds, this gets refreshed. And here's our critical ServiceNow message that just appeared after it got refreshed. And then we can look at the action log. And we see the correct filter was selected. Filter 3, ServiceNow critical selected. We submitted a request to create the ServiceNow ticket, and we got a response from ServiceNow that through the API that the request was completed, and it gave us an incident number. Here's your ticket. I can actually copy this, and I could go to my ticketing interface, log in, And maybe I want to search for that number. And voila, here we go. Comes up. I click on it, and we see we have a number, we have a caller, we have a category, we have a state, we have impact, urgency, and priority. The correct group was assigned, and remember our description. We had for a short description, we had variables, and the variable resolved the system name, the message ID, and the free-form text. Critical service now message one. And then for your long description or description, that got resolved as well. So pretty straightforward when it comes to ServiceNow. Let's look at how it would uh, how we define it for escalation. So um, let's go back to here and let's look at escalation, shared escalation. And here we have a couple of them, and I can look at them to see. Edit it. There we go. And you notice for escalation procedure, we have escalation intervals. And these escalation intervals, you can define them in minutes from 1 to 99. So depending on how often you want to escalate that event, you can choose the escalation interval here within the application. And then for the escalation action procedure, we have a couple that was defined for this particular escalation. Um, we have a combo. We're sending a mail and we're interacting or integrating with ServiceNow. And if I look at that, I can see it's using the same notification template process where you can quickly click on that and pick the appropriate template as an escalation action. One of the things I want to point out while we're here, if you are creating an escalation action for the first time and you want to select an action, regardless of which level you want to send it, you will decide what the action is. So we have some flexibility here where you have the ServiceNow integration as an action. We also have the send page, you have the send mail, and we have that run command option. So run command allows you to run any IBM I command as an action. So it could be even a call program and pass parameters as an action. So that's very powerful to be able to run a command as escalation action as well. So that's escalation in a nutshell. Let's go on and show you syslog. So we talked about ServiceNow. We talked about shared escalation. Let's show you what we do for syslog. So if I go here and I look at, well, let's look at the filter first. And we can see, pretty much same design, right? Once you learn it, you know it. Sequence number, name, description. And in this case, we're saying any messages that occur in our system, we want to send them over to the syslog team and let them perform the analytics and their data mining and whatnot on it. So in that case, you want to look at the script, and we have the ability to attach a script to the rule. Let's look at the details of that script. And here we have that command we talked about, the ABM syslog command that allows you to put in your destination address, your severity level. If it's info, is it an error? Is it critical? Is it urgent? Things like that. That's would be your severity. And then your tag, right? Whatever you want to tag it, that the syslog would use as a key. Or on top of that, you can also put in freeform text and or just simply use variables or do both. Combination is allowed as well. And that select variable option is handy to take you to those variables. And you can see there's a ton of them to select from. You can get as granular as you like with those variables. And that's pretty much how we do it with syslog. So pretty seamless, not too uh, difficult, as you can see. And then I think we're ready to look at dashboard. I know many people are anxious and probably chomping at the bit to see that. Let me just go to that perspective. And here we have dashboards. So here we're showing a network of systems. We have 3 of them. And on the CPU end, we're doing pretty good. They're all in the green, pretty low. Not a lot of activity on these servers in that respect. But what about DASD? We look like we're uh, this one, we're doing okay. The one in yellow is getting to that critical range, whatever the threshold is set to. I suspect it's at 70. So when they hit that 70 mark, it'll turn red like this one. So this is the one is of concern on DASD. And so you're looking at situations at a glance, and right now it's piqued your interest. Maybe you want to look at this middle one to see why is it creeping up to that critical level. Let's take a look. And obviously we can look at um, CPU in a historical or real world. I must have clicked something. Let's go back in. In a the real time drill down or historical for CPU, or maybe you want to look at DASD, which is the one we're really interested in. Let's look at historical because I think that's more meaningful to talk about from a aggregation point of view. So here we have on the line graph, we have these little points that we can drill down to. Perhaps you want to know why, um, at uh, the high here, it went up, or maybe on this, they all, the low, the high, and the average all met up at one point. What happened there? Maybe that's interesting enough. So take a look. We can click on that to drill down. It takes us to the next level of drill down capability. Now we can continue to pick on these different points on the graph, but we also have that drop down where you can select the time. So either one works. Let's pick one at 1900, and it takes us to the next level of drill down at 1900 between these timestamps, right? You can take a look at each one of these timestamps that you want to look at any point on the graph, and you have those those drop downs actually to drill down, and then we can click on a point again, and then it takes us to the details. And this is where the details exist, where you can look at this point um, of the operation. On this day, at this time, this is how our system was. So you can see the idea is start at a 50,000 foot view, and then start doing some data mining by drilling down, and continue to drill down until you get to the details. Pretty nice to be able to do that. And imagine we're going to be providing this not just over metrics, but also not only performance metrics, we'll be able to do that as well for other type of condition monitors, like job statuses and subsystem statuses and job queues and things like that. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. For the moment, we will go into our Q&A segment, and I'll bring back up our PowerPoint, and we'll take a look at those questions that came in while we were doing our presentation. So let's take a look, see what we got. Okay, first question: are you certified on Splunk or ServiceNow? We're not so concerned about certification um, on those appliances. We are really an IBM I shop. So, but um, as far as those appliances are concerned, they typically have their own admins. We can point you in the right direction. We have enough experience to work with those appliances. But for certification, we don't think it's necessary. Next question: is the iSeries monitoring integrated in real time? Is iSeries monitoring integrated in real time? Um, Not sure what's meant by that, but I think if he means that if the integration is in real time, the answer is yes. So it's the integration between the iSeries, or today they call it the IBM I. People know it's an AS400. It is actually the integration is happening in real time as the event is being collected by our application, and then the API is being used um, and triggered from a filter, an escalation, or from a command from your own custom program. All right, next question: are there any plans to integrate ABS message with Zendesk? We have plans to integrate with other non-IBMI solutions. The next one on our list is PagerDuty. So we plan to do that shortly. We'll make note of Zendesk, and we'll see where we can put that on our timeline. Thank you for that question. Next question: how is disk storage data collected? We have our own. We're not using. I know what you're probably headed at. Are we using performance tools that ship with the IBM I? No, we're collecting our own database of that information. So um, that's inside of the application. We are actually collecting that information and presenting it in real time to our dashboard. We also can, just as a point of information, we also can alert on disk information, disk related information that is reaching or near or exceeded predefined thresholds. So you can send out alerts as well, whether it's a text message to a smartphone, um, maybe an email to to multiple recipients, or maybe you want to interface with another type of platform using SNMP. We can do that, or you want to send it to ServiceNow, create an incident ticket. Soon we'll have PagerDuty and other appliances doing the same thing. So a lot of flexibility as far as alerting when the threshold has been exceeded, or it's been close to it. When will the roadmap features be available? I don't have an ETA, but we expect it. Well, right now on our timeline, uh, we're without any hurdles. We're expecting it to be possibly either the end of this month or the middle of next month. Will alert notification, escalation, and or action be performed to be to perform be available when monitoring various system resources? Will alert, escalation, action. Yeah. So I think that that's been asked. Well, I did answer that even though it wasn't asked. Um, so yes, any resource condition that exists on the eye can be monitored. Um, the resource condition we showed on our overview, it was just a snippet of those conditions, but there's a lot more on that list that we can alert on and perform an action. And an action, take the job queue example where you have 20 jobs waiting to execute, and you want as a reaction for ABS message when that condition um, becomes apparent. Um, do you want ABS message to take that action automatically to move the jobs that are waiting to execute because some job is running too long and is holding up the single threaded job queue, so you want to move that to maybe another job queue so those other jobs could start executing in parallel. Yes, we can do that. We can do that automatically. And if you're interested, we do provide um, a demonstration of our solution. You can certainly take advantage of that. Um, we are, I mean, we had a lot of questions. I may not be able to get to all of the questions. I know we have exceeded our hour. We went over about 5 minutes. So I we will be answering those questions offline for those of you who we couldn't get to your question. So um, what we'll do now is just show you our contact information. For those of you who needed to contact us, our contact information is on the screen. Feel free to contact us by email or by you can go onto our website, which is csoft.com. There's tons of resources and information on there, and you can also use our email address and phone numbers to contact us. So thank you for attending, and uh, hopefully we'll be working with you in the near future. So thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of the day.